Yes. What I want to do first is welcome you all into Life Without Limits, because there are no limits to what you can achieve. My name is Joan Kaler, and my intention is to inspire you to live your best life. As such, I have the most remarkable guests on my podcast. I'm so excited. So what I'm going to do here is bring Dr. Gallo in, but first, let me give you a little bit of background. I have known Dr. Fred Gallo since, oh my goodness, 1996, 1998, way back in the other century. If I were to put all his honors and credentials, that would take the whole webinar. So what I want to do is just read a couple of things to you, and you're going to see it all on the iTunes description when this is published. But Dr. Gallo has been a practicing psychologist since 1994. He graduated from Duquesne University with a degree in philosophy and psychology in 1968. And he has gone on to be the most prolific writer, teacher, the creator of the world of energy psychology. It's been fantastic. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Dr. Gallo. Here we go, Fred Gallo. More, promote to panelist. And here he comes. Good morning, Dr. Gallo.
Hi, Joan. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast and webinar. Whoa, we did it.
Thank you for inviting me.
I was just telling all our guests, I don't know if you even saw it on YouTube, but I was introducing you and saying, if I were to spend the whole time talking about all your achievements, we'd be here all day.
You're too kind.
I was telling everyone I have known you, I think it's been since 1996, 1997.
Yeah, sometime in the 90s. Yeah.
Sometime in the 90s. And I've been following your career, all your books. You are the creator of energy psychology. That is why it is such an honor to have you on this podcast.
Well, I don't know that I'm the creator of energy psychology. I gave it the name.
You gave it the name.
I gave it the name.
Well, you started a movement.
Well, I had something to do with it. Yeah. a little
You had
bit.
A lot to do with it.
Well, thank you.
It's been fantastic. And I'm going to be showing everyone your website, your books. You are a prolific writer. So thank you for doing this. But I wanted to start out with asking, so there may be a lot of people that don't know what energy psychology is. That's why I usually get what the heck when I say that I'm certified in energy psychology. They look at me like a deer in headlights. What is energy psychology? So here it is from the
horse's mouth.
Horse's mouth. What is energy psychology for anyone who doesn't know?
Okay, let's see. Try to keep it simple here. You just figure everything is fundamentally energy.
Yes.
So our bodies, even though they're solid and they're matter, at the most fundamental level, they're energy. Einstein told us that. It's in quantum physics. And so what energy psychology does, which is different than other approaches to, let's say, therapy and psychology, is instead of just saying, it's, for example, thoughts produce emotions, which they do, okay, and that emotions have something to do with brain functioning, which it does, and it has something to do with, let's say, our behaviors and so on have to do with the environment and our past, our psychodynamics, as you would call it. At the most fundamental level, it's energy. And so energy psychology includes approaches that focus on creating change, diagnosing and creating change through energy systems. And one of the ways, just one of the noted ones, and it's not the only way, is to actually have a person tap with their fingers at certain locations on their bodies. And there's a number of approaches that use that term. But you can also do that by touching locations, by observing other people tapping, by doing certain visualization exercises. There's a variety of things. But actually, we even think that a lot of the approaches that really get fundamental results are doing it because they're creating a change in the way things are occurring energetically, the way the energetic vibrations through the body, the nervous system, the heart energy, meridians and acupuncture, chakras, biofields, goes on and on and on.
Okay.
Is that a long-winded way of saying?
No, that's beautiful. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Gallo is an esteemed PhD licensed psychologist. He is not a quack. So, hearing it.
Some people might think I am.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
This is coming from literally the horse's mouth of what this is. And the energy being, as I understand it, the electricity that flows through our bodies through these meridian pathways. So even when people go, when I try and explain to people is when you go for imaging, when you go for an MRI, when you go for a functional MRI, when you go for an EKG or EEG, all those instruments are measuring the electrical system.
Absolutely.
In your body. Just by the fact that we're alive and breathing, we have an electrical system.
Sure.
Yep, absolutely. So we are energy, we are electric. I'm going to go back just a few years because you first learned about all this through Roger Callahan, right?
Yes. That's
okay.
correct.
So you went out and studied with him in Palm Springs?
Indian Wells, California,
Wells.
which is near Palm Springs.
Okay. And then he had his system of thought field therapy.
Which he originally called the Callahan technique.
The Callahan technique. And you became fascinated with that.
That's right.
Decided that you wanted to, hey, what is this thing? I want to look into this more. I want to start teaching it. I'm going to create my own system. And I'm going to start teaching it to anybody who will listen.
Sure.
Yeah. But that's where all this originated.
Yeah.
But from Roger Callahan and you and Gary. I tell people I am the second generation because I learned from you. I learned from Gary Craig. I learned from everybody at the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology. It's changed my life for sure.
Well, it's changed my life too. Just to give you a little background there, just real quick. It was in 1992, I had read an article by Roger Callahan where he talked about treating addiction. And he explained it. He talked about an energy system in the body and it being related to addiction, being related to anxiety and so on. And I agreed. And then he finally goes, and here's the solution. You have the person tap under their eyes and under their arm. And I thought, this guy lost it. But then I experimented later, and I found that I was getting somewhat of a result with this. So I thought I should get in touch with him. So I contacted him in 1992, and we developed a relationship. And I traveled out there and spent time with him, a lot of contacts on the phone and so on. And then I started, really got deep into it, and also checked out his sources. So I studied the work of George Goodhart, who developed applied kinesiology, and John Fee, who developed something called Touch for Health. And I got in touch with John Diamond, who was a psychiatrist from Australia, who had studied with Diamond, or not Diamond, had studied with Goodhart and developed his own method. And so I went around studying with all these guys, checking out what they were doing. And so then eventually I thought, all this has something to do with energy. I looked at different things in the field of kinesiology and even eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I studied with Francine Shapiro, and I had studied neurolinguistic programming prior to that with Bandler and Grinder and so on, and Milton Erickson's work with hypnosis. So I thought something's going on energetically with all this. So then I, somewhere in the process of talking with Charles Figley, Dr. Charles Figley from Penn State University, he asked me if I would like to write a book. And so I said, yeah, that's a good idea. And so I started writing this book, and we decided, what was the name going to be? What was the name? And originally I was going to call it Therapy by Energy, which was an article that I had written before. And but the more I thought about it, came up with the name Energy Psychology, and it just sort of rung a bell. And so that's what we decided to call it, what I decided to call it. And so the book came out, and the book looks like this. I can show it to you. It's this book. This is the second edition of it.
Oh, wow.
Okay, that was second edition. The first edition really came out in 1998. And, then a whole bunch of other books turned out, all having to do with that theme.
I would say so, a bunch of other books. I'm going to take everybody for a moment here because I want to show folks what a prolific writer you are. Oh my goodness gracious. Let's see, we're going to share the screen in just a moment here while I bring you up. Okay, I want to go here. I want to go here. I'm going to share the screen. Okay, everybody, just hold on to your seatbelts for a second here because this is going to be amazing. So here we go with Dr. Fred Gallo. Look at this, everybody. I mean, geez Louise. Here's the beginning, energy tapping, energy psychology, energy tapping for trauma, energy there's the original energy tapping, which I am so proud to say I have a signed copy. Oh, just on and on and on. The man cannot stop writing, which is a good thing. But
I lost my mind.
I remember reading 3 books and then I said, Fred, slow down. I can't catch up. He's brilliant. And the thing about Fred is he's so humble. Oh my goodness. A genius and humble at the same time. Going. I'm going to take everybody to your website for a moment here too. As long as I'm sharing, let's share away here. Okay, this is Dr. Gallo's website. So Dr. Gallo, Fred, let's see. I feel comfortable calling you Fred, although please, everybody, in respect, it's
no,
Dr.
please
Fred
call
Gallo.
me Fred. I'm calling you Joan.
Okay, please. So let's say, what tab should we click on to see what the heck you're doing? Because you travel all over the world teaching. What is your current system right now?
Well, I teach energy diagnostic and treatment methods, but I have a whole bunch of other aspects to energy psychology, something called the identity method, which utilizes a combination of physical sensations and imagery. I have something called energy consciousness therapy, a couples course we call the Amazing Couples Course, course on trauma. The certification training is like 8 days of training plus some supervision time. And I have a number of practitioners and trainers in different parts of the world that teach the method, that are authorized trainers.
So look at this, everyone. We've got Africa, Asia, Australia, Canada, Europe, level 4 trainers, Middle East, New Zealand, South America, United States. Dr. Gallo's work has floated all over the world. So, this is so exciting. In his teaching, in his training, he has people all over the world that teach and use energy psychology. What I'm starting to understand now is, first of all, I tell people, if you're getting traditional counseling, please look for someone that knows energy psychology or some variation of it, because if I just had to do traditional counseling, I would be bored out of my mind. Number one, it wouldn't really help people, it wouldn't move them. And number two, I mean, there's something to be said for, of course, the therapeutic relationship, client-centered therapy, but then after that, I want to help people change their lives, not just continue to talk about things. So I'm going to stop sharing here.
Well, there's a place for talking,
There's a place
that's
for
part of
talking.
it.
Okay.
Human beings talk. So, but there's a lot of things that just, a lot of situations don't change just as a result of talking.
Right.
You have something is some sort of an intervention with that too. And I mean, your relationship is very important. I mean, if you don't have a connection, you don't have good bedside manner with your clients, I don't think you're going to be of much help. You need to be able to listen, understand, and then at some point you intervene and you show them something that can be done that helps them to shift their state.
Yes.
And energy psychology approaches do that very efficiently.
Shift their state. That is a beautiful explanation.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I love energy psychology so much, for instance, I was working with a client yesterday and we were doing a virtual. First, we did in office virtually by imaginal exposure. And then I worked with her in her home. She was quite surprised at the results that she was getting because we were in the situation that caused her the most distress. So thank goodness for technology that we were able to do that. And now she's like, oh, I've been dealing with this for years. I can't believe it could be this simple. I hear that over and over again.
Sure.
Yeah, because what I explain to people is, what I find in my counseling practice is half of people have heard of tapping and the other half have no clue what all this is about.
Yeah, there's two types of people in the world, those who tap and those who don't.
Well, everyone join Dr. Gallo and I tap. When I think of, I was talking with a friend yesterday, when I think of how I started my career in a little teeny tiny, I think it was maybe 7 feet by 7 feet room, this really weird building. And now I am in a very nice suite talking to people all over the world, traveling the world, teaching both electronically and physically. And Fred, none of this would
Where have you been
happen.
traveling lately? Where have you been traveling lately, John?
Well, I recently went to Vancouver Island to teach.
Okay.
I have a new course coming out. Thank you for asking. I have a new course coming out very soon on Udemy, which is my online platform.
Nice.
udemy.com. And people can find that if they go to tappingwithjoan.com.
Okay. Nice.
I created the beginning, a trauma course on what to do in the beginning stages of shock. Not that I'm treating anybody that has PhD or trauma through a course on Udemy, no. But this shows what to do immediately after the event, or if they have PTSD and start to think about what happened several years ago and they start to feel viscerally the effects of that trauma, emotionally the effects of that trauma, all that, teaching people how to self-regulate and resource themselves. So I'm starting out with that, and then I've been invited to the Philippines.
Beautiful.
Whoopee! In March to teach there. So everybody, between Dr. Gallo and myself, if you want to learn what energy psychology is, and I specifically teach mastering the art and science of emotional freedom techniques. So if you want to learn what this is all about in general or specifically for trauma, here we are. We definitely do that. So I'm looking forward to 2019 on my bucket list is to travel throughout the world teaching. I'm hoping to get to Egypt.
Wow.
I thought, oh, I'll start out with Europe. I'll start out in England. Oh no. God has me going to the Philippines. Woohoo!
Yeah.
So Philippines, I'm coming to you.
Yeah.
Um,
Good.
It's just such a privilege.
Spreading the good news.
Spreading the good news. Spreading the good news that help is available, that healing is possible. You don't have to stay stuck in your trauma. You don't have to stay stuck in anxiety, depression, and panic attacks.
Sure.
Sure. And that's my message. That's why this Life Without Limits podcast is all about giving hope to everybody and inspiring everybody to know that there are no limits to what they can achieve. Lord knows I don't know what's happening tomorrow, but here I am talking to you on this podcast, on this webinar, and it's just amazing to me what can be accomplished. Fred, here's my question I ask all of my mentors and teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think some people are so resistant? I know this is a paradigm shift, but you and I have embraced it. And yet certain associations that I won't specifically name are having a really hard time understanding what energy psychology is, what tapping is. Why do you think they're having such a hard time with that?
Well, it's kind of baffling in some way, because if you look at the history, in psychology, for the longest time there was the psychodynamic approach. Okay, so you had psychoanalysis it's the way psychologists did therapy. It's the way psychiatrists did therapy. That's what they did, and it made a lot of sense in terms of that paradigm. You figured that stuff from the past, you have to kind of like bring it up and emote and understand the connection between what's going on now and what happened in the past. And I think that's all, valid. And then some people come along with this, an idea that cognition is the answer. And so it's like that emotions are created by thoughts, and that what you can do is just simply challenge the thoughts. And there was a lot of resistance to that kind of an approach. People like Albert Ellis and Aaron T. Beck, they kind of spearheaded that kind of an approach. And that was back in the 50s. And in the meantime, there's this psychodynamic approach. I mean, there is also a behavioral approach going on, which, originated with Pavlov and B.F. Skinner and so on. So you have these approaches vying for who's going to be in charge, There's a lot of resistance to the cognitive approach, but eventually what happened is it kind of like wed with the behavioral approach, and it became cognitive behavioral therapy. It really took hold. Now, still some people do psychodynamic approaches, but as far as a method that's really accepted, the cognitive behavioral approach is kind of the accepted approach. And there's all kinds of research that supports it. So there must be over 1,000 studies that support the effectiveness of cognitive behavioral therapy. There's a lot of what they call randomized controlled trials that support that. There's even higher level of research called meta-analyses, and there's a lot of them. So they have a very foothold on the whole thing, right?
I'll say.
Okay, and it took a while, but now they're in all the universities. And so universities, they fund this sort of thing happening. So now all of a sudden, this new guy in the block, the new kid in the block comes along. Although there's been other new kids along the way, Gestalt therapy, client-centered therapy, and so on. But we come up with something that's very, very different, very odd. And even though it works, and we have research, more and more research showing that it works, and you can even see changes in the brain that occur as a result of this. You see changes in genetics that occur as a result of this, okay? You see changes in heart rate variability as a result of this. But there's still only about 100 studies, okay? And 100 studies is is a drop in the thimble compared to what these others have, okay? Plus, I think the biggest problem is the theory, okay? So it makes sense to say, well, thoughts cause feelings, but that isn't always true because sometimes feelings come first and thoughts come later. And but this whole idea that it's fundamentally energy, even though physics has come around to that, the field of psychology and psychotherapy hasn't as a whole come around to that. Now, it's inevitable that it will. Like you were saying earlier about how in medicine there's EKGs and CT scans and all of these things that are really resonating with energy. It's a function of energy. So I think it's the theory, and also there's an ego thing involved, because it's like you got this approach that you've been working with, you're committed to, and now this other one's coming along and saying, nah, that's not quite it. Well, that's a hard thing to take, okay? And so I think that creates resistance. And I think the better approach, though, is to understand, like even in the field of physics, what happened, even though Einstein came along and it was a real shift, it did not say, forget everything that Newton did, okay? Newton was still right, but it was a subset of this bigger approach, okay? I guess there's a bit of politics involved in getting any kind of paradigm accepted, that too. But I mean, we got to recognize the value of cognitive behavioral therapy, the value of client-centered therapy and Gestalt and all that. They all have
a place.
And there's no reason you can't be working together, okay?
Right.
So I think the more that message is sent out, which is a more accurate way of working, I think then it'll come around. See, one of the problems was a lot of times, and I've been down this path many times in my career, where some approach comes along and the message is all that other stuff is baloney. This is the only thing that matters. And that creates resistance.
Right.
And it's actually not accurate too, because it's just the person gets so caught up in their approach, they think it's the only way and nothing else matters. Well, once you settle down and you see that this has a place and that has a place and this has a place, like sort of coexistence is needed. I think the more that comes across, I think inevitably energy psychology has to take have a hold in this. I mean, because it's almost I don't know if you can say criminal to not use it. It's
go ahead, say it.
Well, it seems if you have something that efficiently helps somebody shift, and they feel better,
why not
and
try it?
Better in life? Why not? Okay. Of course, then another thing that has a big foothold in the field of mental health is medication. So you have all these medications, and we're talking a multi-billion-dollar industry. Okay.
Right.
And it has its place too, because I think there's value in medication. But I think in our country, I think it's been overly prescribed very often. And but psychiatrists that I know, that I work with a lot of psychiatrists who refer to me, and they'll say, well, what their specialty is in prescribing the medication. They say, Fred, and you take care of the therapy. And as things start getting better, they're willing, the psychiatrists I know are willing to start decreasing that medication if possible.
That's
sure
what I tell people.
Yeah.
Right. I finally found someone that's very integrative, such as myself.
Sure.
So that I will use this particular doctor if I think somebody needs medication. And I explain to people, because no one comes to me and says, Joan, I want medication. Everybody comes and says, I don't want to take medication. And I say, well, let's see what's going on first before we just dismiss that altogether. because maybe for a little while it would be helpful while you're learning these tools. And certainly, if your depression is serious enough, certainly if your anxiety is serious enough, it might be helpful for a limited time. So we're not going to just not consider it altogether.
Sure.
And then you're not going to, I advise people, let's start it or stay on it for 1 full year. See how you feel in 3 months and 6 months and 9 months. And then we'll talk with your doctor and see if he or she is willing to decrease it.
Well, we need to be careful about this whole thing, because the thing is, you and I are not specialists in medication. I mean, I've studied a lot about it, but I don't prescribe medication.
Correct.
Usually it's a conversation between me and their doctor. And, and I always say to the doctor, I said, well, he'll say, he or she'll say, well, what do you think, Fred? And I'll say, well, I'm not the one who's on the line here when you do this sort of thing. But if you want a recommendation from me, I can tell you this, but you got to, and so we discuss it, but ultimately they're the ones that have to prescribe, so they're liable for that sort of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
I got to know my limitation, because I don't have that authorization to prescribe that. But I will have a talk with them. I'll say, the patient seems to be doing a lot better now, and I'm just wondering if it would be possible to start to decrease the medication. Would you be willing to do that? Consider that. And let's see how things hold up at that point. Okay. And so we work together on that sort of thing,
One of the things that's interesting is you and I both practice in Pennsylvania. And now medical marijuana is legal in Pennsylvania for post-traumatic stress disorder. So I have a lot of people calling me up and saying, I have PTSD and I want to try some of the medical marijuana. And then they come in and I say, I'm sorry, but no, you don't. You don't have PTSD. You have high anxiety, you have depression, but you don't have PTSD. So that's been an interesting experience. A couple people truly have. And I've recommended it for them, and I've given them a number of a certified physician who can prescribe, who can certify them and get them a card. But no, people in Pennsylvania, not everybody's going to get on the bandwagon and start taking medical marijuana if you don't have PTSD. That's not what that's about. But that's an interesting situation.
Medical marijuana has been found to be useful for a number of conditions, like PTSD, of course, for chronic pain. Some people benefit for chronic pain.
I'm all for it for the physical.
Fibromyalgia, whatever. But but you don't get high off the medical marijuana. It's not like recreational marijuana.
Right.
A lot of people get benefits from that CBC oil, which is from the hemp plant. CBC oil from the hemp, which is from the marijuana plant, but it's not. It doesn't have any THC in it. Right. But still, we're on the issue of energy psychology. Why does it work? Okay. Just as an aside, I've had a lot of people come to me that have been addicted, to opioids or whatever, and we've been able to use tapping to help them get off that as one of the techniques. And I had one gentleman here a couple of years ago. He was on Suboxone to try to get off the heroin that he had been using. And as he was using our techniques, treating himself for what we call psychological reversal and using tapping, he found he could abstain from using the Suboxone.
Wow.
And then eventually, any cravings for heroin were able to be dissipated fairly easily. And eventually went off the Suboxone altogether.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
I know. It's I can't say that I have only treated a few people in those with that kind of situation, but it was very helpful for him.
And these are the situations that are possible. Yep. Fred, what are your plans for 2019? Where are you going in the world?
Well, okay, I have tried to reduce my travel.
Oh, okay.
because I was at one point, starting in like 93, 94, I started traveling all over the United States. And there was a point at which every 2 weeks I was someplace else. Okay?
Wow.
It was somewhere in the US or Canada. And then my books got translated into German, and I started getting invited to Germany and Austria and Switzerland. Actually, I went to Switzerland first. And I was going, it was like every month I was gone for a week in either Germany, Austria, Norway, Switzerland, Italy, where
Wow.
Fiji, I went to Fiji, I went to Africa, different places. And so I did a lot of that, okay? And there was some point at which I thought, I don't want to do that much of that anymore. I became president of a certain association, ACEP, and I was doing that for 2 years. I just went off the board. So I've been on for 6 years.
Wow.
I'm off the board. So a lot of the books that I was planning on writing, I just didn't have the time to write. I'm going to be writing them. Okay. And I do have some travel plans. Let's see, I'll go to, let me see, where am I going here? In March, I'll be in Heidelberg, Germany, doing a training there. And I have a new training. I'm teaching a strategic energetic coaching. So it's a coaching model that combines energetic approaches with it. Strategic approach and energy, combining those two. Then I'm going to go to northern Germany later in the year. It's to an area called Bad Zwischenahn. Yeah, it's near Oldenburg. And I'll be teaching my certification training there, and also the strategic energetic coaching. I'll present at the ACEP conference in, where is it?
Is it New Mexico?
New Mexico, somewhere near Albuquerque. Near Albuquerque. And I'll be presenting a workshop on treating chronic pain. I was just in Vienna, Austria, and I taught 2 courses there, one on chronic pain and another one called energy consciousness therapy. And I don't know where else, I don't want to do any more than about 4 trainings a year. I might start doing some online. I just had a contact from somebody from England who wants training in advanced energy psychology, and I'll just do it through Skype.
Right.
Person.
Right.
They're a trainer, and they want to take the training to South Africa and throughout England, and that's good to have somebody spreading the word there.
Yes. So we are both.
That's what I'm doing.
Wow. So exciting. So everybody who's listening out there, who is in Europe and Germany and Heidelberg, Fred's coming.
I'll be there.
You'll be there. Anything else that you would like everyone to know about energy psychology or what you're doing? And what you're doing.
Well, keep an eye out for the books. They'll come. Probably turn out one next year.
Wow.
And,
see, that's what I'm working on right now, is taking my courses on Udemy and putting them into books.
Good.
So that'll be.
We can put things out there, so useful information for people to use to help themselves, help clients, and so on. People. I guess another thing I would want people to know is, and you would send a question like this to me. It was like, how does this work? How does energy psychology work? And there's a lot of levels, I think, at how it works. And people like to look at the neurologic aspects of it. I still think fundamentally it's energy. It's sending energy through the system to create a change in how information is stored. But I think it's more palatable for people to understand this. Okay, there's there's a rule, kind of a law in the field of neuroscience called Hebb's Law, H-E-B-B. He was a psychologist from Canada, and it's a very long, involved formula. I mean, it's not a simple thing to understand, but the basic idea is simple. And the idea is that he uses the term neurons that fire together wire together.
Oh.
Okay, so you're having, anytime you have a problem, okay, so let's say you have a psychological problem, let's say you have depression, or you have anxiety, or you have a trauma, whatever, there is a configuration of neurons firing in the system, in your brain. And it's also, there's certain chemical things that happen at the same time. Okay, so for example, there's something called the HPA axis. So there's a trigger of some sort, something in the environment that reminds a portion of our brain called the amygdala, which is a more primitive section of the brain. And it is kind of the scout. It's always looking for danger, and it all of a sudden activates, and it sends information to the hypothalamus, which is another area of the brain. The hypothalamus then informs the pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland informs the adrenal glands. And now you have a stress response. The blood pressure goes up, your heart rate goes up, blood goes away from the surface of your body, and you feel very weird, okay? Now, when that can happen in sensible situations where there's a true danger, or it could be something like you saw a thimble and all of a sudden you have this reaction because that thimble had something to do with something that happened to you a long time ago. Okay. So your body reacts to this. Now, there's a configuration going on. There's that is a neurons firing, chemicals firing in a certain way that occurs, right? So it has a pattern, it has a structure to it. Now, while that structure is occurring, while that comes into place, what we do is we do some odd thing like tapping. So we start tapping, and we're sending, balancing meridians, and the structure, the chemical structure changes too. So we start to have more endorphins occurring, and a relaxation response occurs. So now, while you're tapping, this is being associated at the same time with this other structure, which is this problem structure. So neurons that fire together wire together. So this starts to change the structure of this. Does it make sense?
Yes.
So neurons that fire together wire. So that's one of the things that happens. Another thing that happens is while you're tapping and observing in this way, you step back from it. You're in a sense, mindfulness is occurring because you're stepping back, you're observing it, you're not as caught up in that state because you're doing this tapping. And in a sense, it's a kind of a distraction from it in a way.
Mm.
Where I don't know the other word I'm looking for, but it distracts, it disrupts. Okay. Now, another factor that's going on, okay, so we got this neurons that fire together, wire together. We're stepping back from it. That's more of a different kind of neurons that fire together, wire together, because you're in a different space. You're more prefrontal cortex in terms of your brain. At the same time, anytime you have a problem state, whether it's you go into depression, whether you go into trauma, whatever, there is a long-term memory. Okay, in a sense, it may not be a verbal thing, but it is a memory. In order for that structure to come up, it is there stored in long-term memory, and it comes up, and now you're in the present state of that, right?
Okay, right.
So now what we do is while we're tapping or whatever energy psychology technique we're using, it's come up, we're disrupting it. We're actually changing it. And now what goes back into storage is not the original It's what's just happened.
Wow.
And each time it comes up, we're changing it. So we're changing the long-term memory until the whole system is rebooted.
I love that.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
rebooted. And then if we've done that thoroughly enough, if we've really cooked the seeds well enough, like a kind of a metaphor is, if you take seeds and you plant them in the ground, they'll grow into something. If you take them and you fry the seeds, then if you try to plant something, you won't get anything to grow from it. So in a way, we're kind of like cooking the seeds, frying the seeds, okay, so that when we do it thoroughly enough, there's nothing to come up again.
Wow.
Okay, so I think that's a lot of what we're doing, but very efficiently, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
That same sort of thing can happen through cognitive behavioral therapy. The only thing is, what the research is tending to show is that the number of sessions, the amount of time required to get that kind of a change through cognitive behavioral therapy is a lot longer.
Yes.
Okay, like we're talking, maybe it would take, if you're really good with CBT, maybe you get a trauma resolved in maybe a couple months, maybe. Whereas you might resolve a trauma in a few minutes using energy psychology. I've had many like that, but then there's others that take longer because of how long the trauma's been around, how early it occurred in the person's life, all those things. But still, we have a way of working very efficiently, and we can measure the results occurring. And it's lovely. It's like very enthralling to be able to offer that.
I think it's a very elegant.
Yeah, that's a good word. I like that word for it. It's elegant.
It's elegant.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't tell you, oh my gosh, how grateful I am for your time.
Well, I'm
today
grateful
to help
for the opportunity to talk here today with you.
Well, Fred, I have quite a number of people, so this is going to go out to thousands and thousands of people. So I am thrilled to help educate them on what we do.
Okay.
And thank you for being one of my teachers. Yay!
You're welcome. Good luck to everybody out there, all your audience, and
One thing I always forget to do is introduce myself. So here I am at the end of our time. So
introduce yourself, please. Who are you, by the way? This woman just called me on my computer, and I don't even know who she is.
I'm Joan Kaler. I'm a licensed therapist in Pennsylvania, and I consult and teach around the world. I'm an international speaker, an instructor of emotional freedom techniques, and a student of Fred Gallo's. So everyone out there, thank you so much for listening, for joining. If you find this helpful in any way, and I'm sure you do, please pass this on. Please share this. Please, please, please share this, because I have the privilege of talking to the most mind-blowing people in my field. So the people I choose to have on my show, not only are they amazingly intelligent, but they have the best information to share. So thank you all for watching today. Thank you for listening. If you're new, thank you for coming in. Please rate this on iTunes. Please, please, please. And I want to thank you, Dr. Gallo, for joining me today. This has been remarkable, just remarkable.
Thank you, Jen. It's good seeing you. You take care.
So you have a happy holiday. Merry Christmas. Merry
Christmas. Happy New Year, all that. Okay?
All that. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.